So after listening to this again while editing, I realized this is the kind of video that is going to get another 5 minutes and 32 seconds of tears and black screens made. So to make it abundantly clear, this isn't just one person with a bad opinion this time around. It's a pretty broad swath of 200 Morkite modded Ego Flex players. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, you've definitely touched grass in the last 2 years, and that's big huge. I'm very proud of you. If you do know what I'm talking about, rest assured that I'm doing a better job of keeping my receipts this time, and I'll make our hipster incident look like a firecracker in a bathtub, not Pearl Harbor like you made it out to be. Anyways, let's stomp on some fingers.
The Beninging, yeah.
This is the new Beninging if it's a new video.
Hey, if this is a new video,
I don't know.
welcome back.
To the Let's Play. Part 3.
Yeah, the next part.
Pikmin Bloom.
Well, whether or not it is, let's just get it over with. Let's talk about Has 5 Plus. And
you go first because like all
no,
things
I wanted you to go first.
No,
you got to determine the you turned on the skillet, it's on high, and you just cracked the egg and threw me in, man. Now I'm in the pan sizzling.
You are the egg. But
you just like, yeah, what are you gonna say about it, buddy?
Like
you better say the right thing.
Like all things with DRG, the majority of my issues with this topic has nothing to do with the game itself and all about people.
This is what I was worried about. This is the pan that I'm about to fry in.
The pan.
This is what I'm so worried about.
This video will not exist if you don't want it to. Don't worry.
No, it's okay. I mean, it's just, I will say how I really feel about it, and
I'm convinced that you're gonna be pretty far from my opinion on this. I kind of hope.
I want to take a path that's
through the woods.
It's just fair to
isn't any fighting. Bro said he's wearing his wide brimmed straw hat, fucking with.
If you're watching this, and my opinion on Has 5 isn't what you agree with, or I said something that sounds like I'm doing a character assassination on you, I was just joking. That wasn't real. That was just me trolling. I really agree with you, and I take your side. And what I'm saying is just to placate, okay? If the opposite of that's true and you agree with me,
I've literally got.
We're on the same team. What's up, brother?
I've literally got him at gunpoint right now.
He's got me at gunpoint.
You can see the Discord call. I've got him.
Holy. Okay. Well, then if I'm on trial first, let's start with I think what we can all either side of the aisle agree on here, which is the player vulnerability is a bit of a miss for a lot of people, right? A lot of people are feeling like that's the one I've heard so far is the one people are getting a little sticky with, like they're getting hurt pretty bad. That's the one I feel like people are turning on last if they're doing different groupings of them, it hurts. And I can say that. I don't know.
I definitely agree that it hurts a lot, and I agree with your read on other people, but please continue.
I guess for me, it's the category I find to be a little out of place considering a couple things. I'm not saying it shouldn't be the way that it is, first of all. For those who want to know my philosophy on DRG, I believe that everything that we have in the game is the way that it is, and that's okay, So I'm not against Has 5 Plus or any of these ideas, and even stuff that I don't like in the game. I'm not really the type of person to be like, let's remove the corruptor. It's destroying my frames, and it may send my computer on fire. I have a pretty high tolerance for it. But the thing about the player vulnerability is like lethal enemies exist, and it is kind of like lethal enemies always, which is, there are some mutators that kind of get closer to some of the other stuff, like elites have more health or more aggression, or the ones like Swarmageddon, Exploder Infestation, all that kind of is like a vanilla adjacent more enemies because they're adding these other pools that are coming in to attack you. So it's not that the toes haven't been stepped on in the other categories. It's just that lethal enemies is what it is, which is you're supposed to have the shock value of like, damn, that hurt me really bad. Oh, I got hit again. Oh man, I'm dead, and I wouldn't have been normally. That's the shock of lethal enemies, you know. And this is like lethal enemies always. Now I think for the game to get harder, it does have to have more bite, but it is the one that's weird in that way. And I guess since that's the category I push against, it makes me wish there was a substitution for that category that was something else. But I won't go down that road until we start talking about what could other things be, if you want to do that. Another time, I don't want to sidetrack right away by saying, let's substitute one of them for something else, but that's my sticking point immediately with talking about it.
So my major, like I said, it's not really with the game. It's with how other people are talking about it. Because I've
gone down the wrong path at the beginning then. I've just gone straight into the woods. I'm sorry.
No, you're
Pull me back out.
No, you're doing something right. And I'm going to tie it in what you said earlier / the last video. Let me record 2 voice lines for that so I can make a smooth transition. No, I'm kidding. But what you said in the last video is you really tried with the Corruptor. You foresaw that you're going to have to deal with this for a long time, and you took time and you labbed it. Not really. No, not the Corruptor. Sorry, Caretaker. That's what we were talking about. In Sabotage, I completely got that wrong. 2C enemies. Whoops. So what you're saying about Sabotage is like what you did with Caretaker and with Sabotage as a whole was make it more DRG-like in the way that we attacked it, and there was really just no way to swing it. And that's oversimplifying the amount of time and energy that all of us put into trying to, I wouldn't say like the mission, but trying to crack it and make it flow. And even with all the improvements that were made to it, we still didn't really jive with it. And after a year or two, we were able to say, look, this just isn't it. Like, and obviously no change was made, even though we put in all that time and effort, but at least we were able to say, we gave it a fair shake, we gave it a fair swing, this just isn't how the game, this doesn't feel DRG centric. It doesn't feel like it flows or jives with the other missions, how much it restricts your build diversity, the slowness and staticness and consistent approach to the boss fight that really just isn't influenced by anything. But, you know, we gave it a fair shake. And that's why a lot of the things I'm hearing about the fucking Hazard 5 Plus stuff is pissing me off so much, is because this shit has been out a week. 2 weeks at most, if you were fucking no-lifing the experimental, and people already are saying, this is fundamentally wrong, this is restricting my ability to play the game, I can't tank hits from this or that anymore, it's just, there's no room for interesting counterplay against threat enemies, it's just not right. It's just completely the wrong direction for the game. Modded difficulty better. How could this have happened whenever modded has got it so right, so perfect for so many years? It's like, brother, it's been out a fucking week, and you can't understand that a grunt is going to hit you harder, and that some enemies are now going to one-shot you. And I'm not saying that's the right way for difficulty to go. That's incredibly punishing. I think it kind of is. It's definitely a challenge that not a lot of people are ready to face, and that's really scary for people that have been doubling the amount of low health enemies and crushing a bunch of bugs and feeling really good about themselves. Getting one-shotted by a lot of threat enemies or getting insta-killed by things that have never really registered for them as something that isn't just going to die to volatile bullets before, and it having twice as much health is really uncomfortable and scary. And whether or not that's fair or fun is an entirely different topic, but no one has had enough time to put into this yet to say that this isn't right. Like, I get it, you might not find it fun, and that's probably because you've spent a lot of time playing your own tailor-made advanced difficulty stuff. And I'm not gonna bullshit anybody, I don't know what the difference between 6x2 and Diablo and 7x2L and 9x2 and the right one difficulties are. I'm not off into the weeds like that, but what I can tell you is there's more enemies, some of them are probably more healthy, they probably do more damage to you, and maybe they move faster. I mean, I'm sure I'm missing something. Like, obviously, there's some complexity with the threat enemies and how many of them they spawn. I know a lot of difficulties have been treading into that recently, which I think is the most interesting modded difficulty idea that's ever been explored. Excuse me. But it's just so fucking fast for all the, like, the meta exists outside of Hazard 5 players to be like, oh, well, I can't tank anymore. I can't run through a crowd of grunts to kill a spitballer. You know who you are. I can't run through a crowd of grunts to kill a spitballer anymore, so this is an unfun and bad difficulty. Like, it's definitely going to have pain points. I think Doretta is really challenging to play, and that's where some unfun stuff that I can agree with you on starts to rear its head whenever there's even more holding E simulator. I think that definitely warrants a little bit of consideration. Maybe Doretta gets a 20% damage resistance in 5+. I mean, I don't even know what to say about that. I don't personally think it needs to change. I'll come out immediately and say that I haven't won a 5+8 escort yet. Mainly because Doretta's been getting one-shotted by the grab attack, but that's beside the point. I personally haven't won one yet, but the last fucking thing that I want is to see player vulnerability get nixed or removed or replaced or cut in half before I have a chance to explore it as a difficulty and lab it and put time into it like I have with every other system in the game that I haven't enjoyed. The amount of time I've spent looking at Rockpox and trying to figure out how to crack it and make it fun and being like, okay, well, this is a good build for it, but I hate playing this build. So, like, I've approached it from a lot of angles, and the fact that there's people out here already like, oh, well, this doesn't gel with my idea of advanced difficulty in DRG, fucking toss it, is ridiculous. And it fucking pisses me off, because, like, brother, have you even tried any 5+8 yet before you've roundly condemned it? It's like, and the overwhelming precedence that I keep hearing, which is, in short terms, it's not harder than my 6x2. My 6x2 true solo, 200 more kites solo, it's still more impressive than anything that anyone can do on 5+8. 5+8 is harder in a bad way. It's still easier than all of my modded difficulties, but it is harder, but not in a good way. I get what they're trying to say, but it's fat fucking cope. The fact that you can't cope with a different kind of difficulty after you've been crushing your balls in an industrial strength ball crushing machine for the last 2 years, playing difficulties that are purely there just to make other people go, wow, you're so good, you've got the best tier list because you've played hard content. The fact that you've been doing that for years and now a new difficulty has come along, and just because it's in the vanilla game, it is unapproachable and unassailable for you, it's just fucking ridiculous to me. I'm baffled by that opinion. Like, I get what people are saying, like, it's not fun to get one shot, but we should put some time into learning how to play around a difficulty where there are enemies that can one-shot you. Because even in a lot of modded difficulties, there's not a lot of that. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think there's very many modded difficulties out there where acid spitters less than 1.5 shot you from full health. I don't think that's a thing that many people have put in, and not a lot of people have doubled the health at the same time as doing that. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sure there's, 10 times 1.5, 5 nitro resupplies that does something to that effect, but, when you pair it with the modded difficulty rebalancing patch that buffs neurotoxin and quadruples the damage of face melter, and you kind of just start sniffing your farts all day and kind of losing the thread on what is actually making the game more difficult, I think we need to strip all that away, go back to what DRG actually is, and explore what modded, quote-unquote, modulated Hazard 5+8 is in the game right now. Because I can guarantee you, no one has had enough time to put into it to say, this is too hard. You can say it's not fun. You can say you don't enjoy getting chunked by swarmers and grunts. It's a fair take, but at the same time, it doesn't mean it's worse than a modded difficulty and you should crawl back into your hole and continue playing 200 more kites. I can't stop you from doing that, but if 6x2 true solo is the only way that you're ever going to be interested in playing the game, what do you want Ghost Ship to actually add to add anything to the end game of DRG? You want him to port over 6x2 with your numbers? I mean, I guess that's the only thing that would make him happy, but I don't know how to assail that mindset really.
Loyal DRG viewers and gamers, he still has the gun levied directly at my head. I am okay, but I just want you to know I am in danger, but we'll be okay. So
You can say 6 times
first,
2 should be the
no,
highest
no, no, no,
difficulty.
no. I'm gonna be honest. If you blow me away, so be it. You know, all better for it. So let me backtrack. I realized I had begun to dig my grave when we started this.
Beninging.
Beninging, and I want to address. Let me finish my point about the lethal enemies too. Okay, so the thing is, I want to say, and then we're gonna go into the community stuff. But I want to save my bacon before we get into it. The reason why I kind of push against it is because I'm sort of the opinion, and maybe other people say this, maybe they don't. I don't know. I also should say I float around in this sphere where I don't look at the community response. I don't know. I know that this discussion's been going on. Axis talking about people talking about all this stuff. I have not participated in it because I float around in the sphere of this update where I tried to go out of my way to ignore it. I tried to not be a part of it. I anticipated it being a mess, and I also play a lot of modded where I get carried by people regularly. So I have a lot of experience in these difficulties where the vanilla is being maybe contrasted against ideas that other people have talked about. So, and I know a lot of people that play in that space. Some very personally, some are acquaintances, some are very far away, you know, and I don't agree with everybody, and I do agree with some, you know, and I can definitely play that side of this discussion and also play my own side of it. But I want to do the lethal 2 thing, the player vulnerability. For me, when I see this, I thought player vulnerability, maybe enemy aggression gets tacked in the extra damage. You know, I thought faster enemies and they hit a little harder. That's why I feel like what's weird about the modularity of it is these two things are separated to me. And what's, I guess, the reason why it's weird to me is whenever I've played modded, those two things come hand in hand, always. And same with hazards, you know? It's never been something that's been separated to me that an enemy can be fast and really weak. There are a couple weird mod scenarios I've played where enemies are super fast and, like, has 3, and I've never really thought, like, oh, well, this is like fun, you know? This is definitely fun crushing them and stuff like that, but it's not what I expected. So seeing them separated in that way, I had gone into this patch thinking aggressive enemies is going to be like, they're going to hit a little harder and be a little faster. It's the has 6 change. Their speeds increase a little bit and they're going to do more damage. So I guess for me, those categories being separated are what they are. I got to respect that. But for me, that feels like a category that could have been something else, like a macro adjustment, like wave interval or enemy diversity, right?
I'm glad you
Because
brought this up.
I think
Continue,
that
please.
that's the thing that a lot of people from modded are probably weaponizing, right? And for me, what I want to say is they're a valid thing to want in this scenario. I think enemy diversity would be a cool slider. It'd be a thing that's easy enough to expand, and it would have a dramatic impact on the game. If you had your normal variant, and then your levels 1 and 2 for enemy diversity just expands the threshold a little bit. That's a lot of what's happening in a modded scenario like Hikes has 6 or has 7, right? They mess with that number too. And some of my favorite variants in modded to play lean on that heavily, you know? And so I think for player vulnerability, that's the weak link in my mind personally that I would want to be this other thing. And so now I can easily pivot into the community thing and call out a bunch of people and look at you and say, sit back down. Because I recognize my fault in this. I call myself out first, which is I have this expectation of what this is supposed to be, and that's colored my impression of what it is. And I tried my best to mitigate that beforehand, right? And even though I did, I came in with, oh, well, I kind of wish this was something else. A lot of people right now are really feeling that. They're really thinking, I expected this to be something that it's not, and I don't like what it is. And that on top of what Axis was trying to say, which is unfamiliarity, a pushback from the difficulty, or an expectation fault, and then it's not what you want and you play it, it's something else. That creates a really negative experience with it. Well, that's not all of the game's faults, and it's not all of somebody else's fault. It is a lot your fault, just like it's my fault for wanting this to be something that's not. I can't change that it's these categories, except the modded people that are levying against this have a trump card that's not fair to punch down about it. Because guess what? None of the things in this change for them anything at all, because they can just play what they want. And you're not at jeopardy. You should be thankful that the game is not more successful at making a better product. If you're going to be upset at what Has 5 Plus is and think it should have been this, it should have been that, modded's better, all this other stuff, if that person exists, okay, be thankful it's not exactly what you want, because then people will still seek out modded gameplay to play. If you are convinced that your version of the game is more fun, is something people should be playing, it's better than this vanilla implementation that we got, then bask in being right about it, because those people will come to play with you. If you're wrong about it, you're going to lose the audience to do the thing you want. And I've been a victim of losing the audience to play the way I want to play, or play the games I want to play in the past, and losing that and sort of being mad at the scenario, right? So just be happy that you have an alternative. Nobody is making you do this thing. And at the same time, if I flip around and say not to the modded players, but the other players who are struggling with it or don't feel like it's fair, nobody's making you do it. And it is what it is. It just exists the way that it is. Nobody is making you play with that modifier that is a real sticking point. It might not be fair. It might not be fair to you. It might not be fair to me. But you're your own enemy. You turned it on. You can just not turn it on. So that's sort of the let's put down the sticks in the fight for a second, because nothing changed. Between 4 and 5 for seasons, nothing changed. Now, the only thing that's at task is the expectations everybody has for everybody else about what is going to happen. And for the modded players, there's no problem. You can still play the way you want to play. And for the vanilla people wanting to do the Hazard Plus stuff, I mean, you can, I guess, gripe that some of the things aren't tweaked the way you want to do. But there are new options. Hopefully one or two of them at the very least are adding something to your experience. I would say that as much as I play modded, I also still play Hazard 5. And modularity is a key importance to my gameplay, because I play with people of wildly varying degrees. Some of the people I play with I respect as being some of the best players in the world. And when I play Has 5 with them, it is a joke. It is like ridiculous. It's nothing happens in the game, and I don't have any choice. Honestly, I don't have any choice than to increase the difficulty through mods or something. So having an option like this that allows me to let those people hop in and out, that they are more of a presence in the mission than others, and change that to, how many enemies we see, it lets it scale very naturally for vanilla. Maybe I'm the only person that Has 5 Plus was made for on the planet, okay? But it works for me because I have these different people that I play with that have different experiences or different wants from the game, and it's very fluid to have that. And so let me see past that. The partial modulation, the partial settings do emulate a lot of the things that I like from modded. And the baseline being has 5, I play a lot of has 5 modded like side stuff, and even some of the partial mutators make it feel very similar to other difficulties I played, which I think is successful because not everybody is finding these custom difficulty files and trying them out and have that experience to know what they play like and know that that's what they want to do, but the vanilla game can land next to that. And I hope that the people who are playing partial stuff like more enemies and faster enemies are realizing, hey, this is kind of a lot of fun, because that's not dissimilar from a lot of the modded difficulties I play with people as well, you know, that are just a little bit more pressure and they make you run. You know, it goes back into the enemy diversity stuff from there, but yeah, I don't know. That's a few angles. I'll let you jump back in. I've been on a tirade, but
No,
there's my preface.
You had a shorter tirade than me, so yeah, sorry. Sorry, I was letting you go. Just to be clear, I'm not the worm in the dirt. I was talking to Mike after I uploaded the all 4-player all enemies at once thing, because obviously he's the one that really brought it up. Like, I considered it,
essentially
but he said Soren challenged you to do it, more or less. So I, messaged him about it, and he was like, "Oh, how was this and that?" And we kind of pivoted into talking about 5+ a little bit, because obviously I was like, yeah, I'm looking forward to trying to step it up a little bit with Halves 5+. And just to read a little excerpt from him, a few messages. He said, "Haha, 5+ is turning out to be a bit polarizing. A lot of players feel compelled to play it with everything set to level 2, which is not really the intention, as that messes with the game too much. It's intended as a challenge, but not as a way to play the game all the time." And I feel like that's one of the things that the modded players are looking at this as, is if it's not all the way to the right, why would they care? Because it's not as hard as it can be, so it doesn't really fit into the modded view of the game. Maybe I'm reading that wrong, but I don't know. It seems to me like pretty much everyone can see like the harder modded difficulties as being the like flexier way to play. Like, sure, they get more boring, sure, they get more tedious with having to sit in chokes and spam fire spread and persistent plasma and everything. So I'm sure everyone has a different determination of like, oh, this is where the line is, this is where it stops being fun challenge and starts being slog challenge. And I'm sure that you can never get people to agree with that, but I mean, generally I think that everyone can respect that the more number you go up in modded, the more difficult it is and the more impressive that is to win. I mean,
yeah,
I
gotta have to jump in and say something that's very direct and rude to a particular player here. Okay, if you are non-fictional, if you are playing the game and the challenge for you has to be max, and there's some friction here with the design of maxed out has 5+, and you are baited into doing this because of your ego or whatever, and the challenge has to keep going more and more, you are not good enough at the game. There are people playing the game at a level that trivializes the difficulty of what they present in this, and you are complaining about something that's below that. So keep working harder, because it being maxed out and it feeling not correct and all this other stuff, there are difficulties that are beyond that, and you're trying to work up to that. Well, keep working up, because you're not there yet. And anybody else that isn't that ego-driven, I gotta have it maxed out or else, what's the problem? Turn off some of the stuff. What are you trying to prove? Both of these people, if you are in that camp where you feel like you're obligated to do it, and you're complaining about how difficult it is, you have a whole world in front of you. There are some hard things out there people have made, and you should be working towards playing them. If you want to brag, if you want to have the ego, you're in the wrong group. You got to get on a different path, and now is the day. Otherwise, you're wasting time. So don't even waste time bothering complaining about some vanilla difficulty crap, because you're not in it. You're not in it to win it. So that's the reality of it for those who are having that problem.
Maybe I'll throw it on in the background. We'll probably have to go get more footage because it won't be long enough. But the first mission that I jumped into on 5.8 with Soarer, Hydex, and I think someone else from my server, I think it might have been Pat. You know, we weren't fucking sitting in the space rig labbing builds. We weren't, checking the wiki for numbers. We won the first 5.8 we played. It was a refinery. And I took almost no damage until the very end when I got tag teamed by Macteras because I got out of position trying to get a Jada's. Point being, I was able to play almost a no-hit through that mission, and that is the complaint that I'm hearing so far, is like, oh, the player vulnerability is made for people who are speedrunning no-hitting missions. Okay? Mm-hmm. If you aren't, then you need to turn it off, because that is what it's for. Is for people who can dodge the volume of attacks that they're contending with. So whether that's doubled up more enemies modifier or base has 5 spawns, the player vulnerability, and especially with aggressive enemies as well, you don't even need more enemies. The Spitballer one-shotting you. The fucking Corlock taking half your health with one ball. A Grunt taking half your shield. A Green Swarmer from a Brute Nexus takes half your shield. That's an interesting challenge to me. I mean, look, maybe I'm desensitized because I haven't tried Diablo Sauce 7L fucking 10 Nitro Resupply. I'm sorry to keep bastardizing the names of your fucking certified hood classic difficulties, but like,
he's pressing the gun to my head.
Like, I don't mean to fucking slander your hood classics, but every time I see someone on my friends list playing 9x2 increased diversity, and then I find a video of them playing on YouTube, and it's literally them just sitting in a choke on 200 Morkite mining missions, fucking just spamming with 3 resupplies behind them. I don't necessarily see that as a interesting tune in difficulty. Like, I'm sure it's fucking hard. I'm sure you've lost a dozen missions to get that good run, and I'm not saying that it isn't difficult to do, but the fact that people just want to... Not the same people that I'm referring to in that case. I don't know if the fucking goobers who hate being hit by a grunt and actually taking damage are even able to play 9x2. But the thing is, like, if you are uncomfortable with basic enemies doing more damage, like significantly more damage, or if you want to be literal about it, you taking more damage from enemies that you can usually shrug to shoot priorities, I mean, I'm just surprised that that's not a thing that you've experienced before, or a challenge that you're ready to rise to meet. Because, I mean, I get that it's probably not everyone's favorite way, and I don't think Ghost Ship can satisfy everyone with their implementation of increased difficulty, and I think a flat has 6 would have absolutely been the wrong decision as well for a number of other reasons. But, I mean, I still would have tried it and played it and enjoyed it, and even if it wasn't the new default way to play, it still would have been an interesting challenge, and I would have risen to meet it. And I think that's something that I guess I have a privileged opportunity to, as someone who has, for one reason or another, kind of bounced off of difficulty modding in this game. At personal, petty level, it's because of the players, 100%. It's just because 99% of the players in the modding space are just absolutely fucking insufferable to interact with, in my experience. At least the ones that come to me and interact with me, and that's definitely my fault, because, only mad people leave YouTube comments like that to be like, I'm a modded player, I do this, I do that, watch this person play, you're trash. So, let me clarify and say that it's not 99% of the people playing mods that are fucking egotistical shitbags. It's the people that I've interacted with, and it's the people that I know exist in this space, and if I wanted to go in there and play the game the way that I do, and really push the game to its limits, these are the one-upsmanship fucking riders that will never go away. These are the people that I can never block enough. There's always going to be a new one. There's always going to be another one in my ear like, oh, a fucking 9x2? How about trying it without Bosco next time, you fucking shitbird? It's like, you'll never make these people happy, and comparison is the thief of joy. So I just don't even engage with it. I've been pushing Hazard 5 the entire time I've been playing the game, essentially, and I'm starting to feel, it's convenient timing in hindsight, I was starting to feel like, yeah, I am running out of push to do in 5, but even at that, it was still an enjoyable experience, even if I didn't feel like I was still gaining a lot of skill in the game, if it felt like I could handle pretty much every situation in the best sense that I could. I was like at a personal limit. I'm far from the best in every situation, but as like on like a personal level, I was happy with the way I was playing. So having a new difficulty handed to me that I don't have to fucking engage with a bunch of people that are going to try to send me a zip file that contains some new ball crushing hammer that I have to engage with, or else I'm washed up and no good. And I don't have a comment section full of people. It's like, oh, well, now 7, now more diversity, now Diablo. I just don't want to open that line of approach, because those are people that will never be happy and will never make you happy to be around.
I guess I would say it's, the community thing. I gotta be careful, because if I don't jump in, there will be other guns pointed at me besides yours. So I would say, like, it's not the 99%, or it's just there are people or figures that are so very loud about an ego-driven aspect of the challenge within the game. And if you see like what Axis is saying about it, and you don't feel like that doesn't align at all with the people that I've met that do it, well, he's not talking about those people, and I'm not going to name like individuals that are the people that he's talking about. It's this expectation as far as making content in that space versus how Axis already made his content. For me, it's easier to broach something like modded and be in that space and be just a random guy who plays the game for fun. As is, I'm sure if modded players are hearing this, they probably feel like I'm just playing this for fun because I enjoy X, And many people are, and Axis would be in that space too, but because of the type of content Axis makes and who he is, it's different than if I were to do it. Which is, if I made content in the modded space, I'm not skilling anything. It's not about me being the guy. I make content that's funny, and I just talk about stuff. And sometimes I look at mechanics. And that's just who I am as a person. And there's a lot of hand-waving from people that is just like, well, that's who Milli is, and you don't have an expectation for him to hit these things or be this person to push it. I feel like maybe to jump in and get in between this, if it's not just Axis putting this on himself, and it is also his community, I think it's fair for him to assume that if he made content or played in that space, it would be in that realm where it's like, I would assume you would feel pressured to continue moving the needle, right? Because you are, a large part of your content is mastery, right? Or awareness of it, And that's a totally different ballgame to have to deal with rubbing against different egos in that way, It's not the same as just like, I'm going to play this modded thing because it's a fun thing for me to do. Is that fair to say?
Oh yeah, I've touched into modding quite a bit. I've played pretty much every difficulty at least once, aside from the absolutely absurd shit that really revolves around like playing a well-balanced team. Like, I've never seen one of the people on my friends list play 9x2 with less than 4 players. And I've never seen them. Maybe they go offline when they're going to record true solo or something. I haven't gone deep down the rabbit hole. Correct me if I'm wrong, if that's a common approach, because I know there's a few people that like you've talked to me about in private before that really, really push the difficulty and don't even talk about it. That are beating has 15 times whatever. Like the shit that doesn't even have a name, the sliders all the way to the right, to the point that it shouldn't even be possible to survive, and they're doing it. Like, those aren't the people I have issue with. It's the people that are fucking barely clutching up on 6x2, wiping the sweat off their brow, and then coming to give me a
And asking you
timestamp.
where's your 672, buddy?
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
no,
like
I
giving me
understand.
timestamps in the all enemies video about like, oh, you missed all these shots on the patrol bot. You're so bad. No wonder you don't play modded. It's like, bro,
Wait,
you
really?
didn't. Oh yeah, you didn't see that comment? It's really good.
No, that's crazy.
Yeah, but I mean, I could say a number of things. Like this was my 2.5 hours of nonstop fighting. So forgive me for missing a rapidly moving enemy, or whenever I went to that person's channel and clicked to a random timestamp in one of their 6x2 EDDs, and I watched them one shot their driller as scout. But that's none of my business. 1956 in that video, by the way, if you want to go check it out. But
Of firebombers coming.
moving on. Yeah, I don't know. You'll never be good enough for them, and I think what you're saying is a good point. Is that if you're not trying to be the guy that's good, and I don't necessarily think I'll ever be the best, and I don't think I am. And the introduction of modded difficulty into this conversation just completely muddies the water. It's like, am I the best at sitting in a choke point and clutching up on 9x2? I mean, no, because I've never played it, but I don't necessarily think those players are any good.
I guess
Like,
the all of this revolves around the same issue about the community response, or the people we're talking about response to what we've been given. It all revolves around the same problem, which is expectations. Expectations of you, or your, in your interactions with people, their expectations of the game, and all this other shit. And I don't know. It's all the same problem. I think if you peel back the community thing, which is your main issue with it, and if I can ask those people who are mad or just want a little bit of something different, or just want access to F off forever and never talk to them, if we could just hold off for a second and talk about has 5 plus, the thing is, I watched somebody who I watch play like 20 hours a day every day, and it's crazy. I'm worried about his health. I don't tell him, but I'm worried about it. He plays this shit on Xbox, Cat Aeon named. Like, he doesn't have access to modded on console. There's not like a option. He's gonna get a way to reinvigorate the game for his group and his play, and like maybe that's a bad thing because he should probably hop off. He plays way too much Deep Rock. I play way too much Deep Rock. But now he has a new way to play it that is going to add like a lot of hours, So there's silver lining here. Like, maybe it's not perfect, and it's not exactly what you wanted, but it is like the first time the devs have moved the needle, and it's a universal thing. This is non-modded, might not be the modded thing you wanted to make it into the game. Shit, there's some modded profiles I would have loved just be in the game, But now the Xbox players can have it, and they can suffer for it, and if people want that challenge and they just want to coast on it, like many of the modded players just want to chill and play their thing, well, they got a new level to chill on until it's the new minimum, and then they can move that needle for themselves slightly, Maybe
Yeah,
eventually that maybe the 5 plus 8, the maxed out version, becomes the new has 5 for everybody. Well, that's what we've been working towards for a long time, and this is a product of, a big round of applause for GSG. They did give people what they wanted and asked for a long time, but they also did an amazing job avoiding doing it for years. It's like amazing. People wanted has 6, and they found a way to continue to move the needle subconsciously for the player base along and along and along, and now they said, all right, have at it. You can move the needle you want in-game if you want, and they made it kind of tough. It's not that I'm saying, oh, this is too easy, or oh, this is too hard. I'm just saying, compared to Has 5, the jump in difficulty is measurable enough that they gave people a new difficulty after saying for so long we're never going to give Has 6. And they've slowly made things harder, added Trijaws to the game, added Stingtails, and added Septic Spreaders. Those are difficulty increases. Those difficulties, those objects affect modded. I've watched for years the modded players scramble when seasons come out to deal with the new content and how that affects how they want to play. I don't hold it against them that they don't want this new content to ruin the way they really enjoy the game. I don't fault them like saying, in your face, this is harder now, isn't that what you wanted? I understand they want to play the thing they always want to play, and these new things actually throw a wrench in it. And to me, that's a huge success. That's GSG moving the needle to be harder to account for players getting better without actually saying here's has 6, you know? And I think, like, everybody's on the same team. We just got a bunch of more options, you know? The console players have an ability to have something adjacent to modding that they've never had before, you know? PlayStation users can't even experience modding at all. There's some, you know, loopholes to get modding to work on Xbox through, you know, dark magic, but like PlayStation users, this is a big thing for them. They can say, holy, I get to play this game I like, and there's a new cranked up thing, and it's hard as shit. Wow, I hate this. I wish they'd never put this in the game. Good. Great. Adversity is like that. In the beginning of these seasons, people are going to get pushed back. It's going to feel bad. People are going to get mad about some stuff. But you will adjust to it, you know? And some of these things you feel like, this is way too much. Well, once you adjust to it, maybe it's not going to be that anymore. Maybe it will be okay. And maybe not. Maybe you hate GSG and hate Deep Rock and everything they do is bad, and they really should have picked the numbers you wanted in your head. Yeah, you're right, man. I'm sorry.
Team.
They messed up. You know, whatever. Sure, good. Go for it. You weren't listening to what I had to say anyways, because you were right and I was wrong. But yeah, if they just made the game perfectly the way you wanted, it would have been perfect. Yeah, cool. But no, but for the players, like, there's a lot of more access to different things, and you know, the difficulty is a jump for those who are used to something, and that's always going to be hard. I mean, robots are a great example of this. Robots had some unfair stuff, and they were also hard. You know, it was a jump up, and you know, the caveat is that I bet after a season or 2 or 3 of people just dealing with it, they weren't nearly as hard as day one. That doesn't make it right that they had some bad design, but I'm just saying, like you said, time is gonna to level this out a bit, you know. So
and to be fair, maybe after a year's time of us trying to push up to vulnerability, it is just gonna be unfair. And it is just going to be unfun, and we're still not going to be able to cope with it. But it's too early to say is the problem with that. And if I could give one thing that kind of ties back to what you were saying before, that I think would completely resolve the situation, is to, like what Mike said, which is you're not supposed to play with all these on all the time. And the false expectation that people are coming to that maybe I'm the chosen one that will play with these on all the time. Maybe in 2 years' time that's the case, but right now, I'm getting my fucking balls crushed by 5+8. And I'm not afraid to admit that, because I'm not someone who has an ego that is directly correlated to how consistently I can win mining missions on the new highest difficulty I want to play. That's a defense I saw from one of the usual suspects in a comment section, which is, no, 5+8 isn't that hard. I can already do Carl Would Be Proud on mining missions, so clearly it's not that hard. And I feel like that just entirely misses the point, that it's not about you being able to do one thing one time really well, or play one mission type over and over again, and that somehow invalidates the difficulty or makes that difficulty conquered for you. It's about basically surviving every situation on a difficulty higher than what you've done before and adapting to those situations. And whether or not 5+8 is always going to be fair in every situation, I don't think it is. I think things like Ebonite Outbreak and Omen Tower are going to be absolutely crushingly punishing, because with Omen, I sit on the pad until the gun shoots me, and that's a has 5 convenience, is I don't take much damage from that first bullet, so I overstay my welcome to try to get more DPS in. And that muscle memory is going to fucking kill me in 5+8 the first time I come up against an Omen and forget that I cannot tank 2 bullets. Those 2 bullets are probably going to kill me. And whether or not that challenge is fair or fun in my mind or anyone else's, it is new, and it shakes up situations that we've been dealing with in a certain way for a long time. So regardless of how the mutators interact with it or whether it's fun or fair, it is more challenging. And like you said, only one, I don't know about by volume, the player count, but only one of the 4 available platforms to play this game on has access to any sort of modding. So
Yeah,
the fact that you
intended.
can,
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, I mean, black magic aside, like,
Yeah,
I mean,
Black Magic aside,
I
it's
mean,
only
I-
a
I-
limited player base for sure.
I
Yeah,
would assume that less than 1,000 people are using mods where they aren't supposed to be, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
That
So-
would be my educated guess. But what I wanted to say is, kind of like what Mike said, is you're not supposed to play with them all on all the time, and the amount of modifiers and the way the modifiers interact with each other, I think, is convincing people that Ghost Ship is just not seeing the full picture on that. And I think they actually are. That they do see more than most players that 5+8 is legitimately just like not fair and not fun to be played on loop for a long period of time. It's a good challenge if you go into it with the thought that I might not win this. And maybe that's what modded players have been doing for years, but that just confounds me even more as to why they can't do that in this situation, which is go into a mission and expect to get one shot or expect to take a death that you wouldn't take the next difficulty down. To me, that makes sense. And if that has to be a one shot, then that has to be a one shot. Like, there's only so far you can push base DRG before you're spawning so many enemies that you have to remove all your particles and your ragdolls, and you get YouTube comments complaining about how it looks like a Roblox game. There's only so much you can do with DRG and so many ways you can twist it before you have to make the threat enemies actually a threat and not tankable, and actually make you consider how you're playing a little bit more intensely. And all this is still sidetracking away from what I'm trying to say, but I think there should be a few more modifiers. Enough that putting them all on legitimately does feel like you're lucky to win. And the one you said earlier, wave interval, is one that'd be good. And I personally think nitro costs going up should be another. Go up to 90 and go up to 100. And
I'm
once
staying
again,
away from Nitro. You can pull the trigger on my head. I'm not. Nitro is going to take us another 30 minutes to bring Nitro into this. I feel like I don't want to do it.
And this flies countercourse to modded once again, but I think it would really sell the idea that you are not supposed to play all of these at the same time. Like, I genuinely think that playing 5+12 with shorter wave timers and less total ammo over the course of a mission and having to get more nitro before that first resupply would legitimately make some tile sets with less than multi-thousand hour player team comps probably impossible. But
Okay,
I
I got to
think that,
blast through. Okay, no, go ahead. Sorry, my bad.
no, you're good. I just think that would kind of seal the idea that you are not expected to win all the modifiers more than once in a while.
Yeah.
Like, you are supposed to
love
pick
that.
and you are supposed to pick and choose based on the mission you're playing, and the default way to play it is maybe one or two. Like, what I've already settled into is aggressive and more enemies. That feels just good and fun in general. Like, I can still tank, I'm still killing the enemies just as fast, so I'm in that modded player space of there's just more bugs for me to crunch. It makes me feel good about myself, and it's like every now and then I'll see a swarmer skitter towards me at crazy speed. I'm like, whoa, that's cool, but it still isn't a crazy challenge.
It puts a bit of pressure on the Nitra thing, like you said. I think better players in vanilla, the Nitra starving starts to go away once you're past a threshold that's pretty deep. I would say you have to be a pretty advanced vanilla player for Nitra starving to completely leave. And I love that they've added an option so that you feel like maybe you still want to build around the fact that you could starve. Even if it's not for yourself, it's for your team, you know? It's like, I think that works really good. I got to blast through some of this stuff, okay? Because we've been spending so much on the community perception and that stuff, but I want to address, like, I want to address tankiness as an option because that's my hill to die on that I've been trying to for a while, but maybe it's not worth me getting into in the video, especially because I think it's too...
I can trim out me calling modded players bad names.
No. You can leave that part in. I guess
no, I can.
We've spent so much time talking about this. I wanna have a quick aside about how to, if you are experiencing this, how to if you're playing on Has 5 Plus and you're in this interval where it is too much for you, legitimately, I want to talk about how to approach that. I've been making up these characters about people who are like, wow, this is a baby mode, and only babies should play it. I want to talk about like ways to approach the game if you want to play with those mutators on in earnest and you're having a hard time. I want to give some advice about that really quick, and then I want to talk about the health. And before I do both of those things, I have to one last time call out the player who is saying like, I played it with all this stuff on, it was way too easy, and what does it matter? I've already done it. It's a snooze. That person already knows, they're at a point where they know what difficulty they should be working on. They almost certainly have acclimated past it because they're playing Cave Madness or above. So that person is really almost certainly a bad actor because they're playing something of a much higher caliber. They're familiar with it. They should know better. They should know better than to criticize vanilla because they're so deep into modded and so consistent with their gameplay. What are they doing? Why would they call out people or call out the vanilla experience? You have long been lost to the sauce. You know where to aim with your comments because you're already living there. You're playing Cave Madness or adjacent. You're working in that space. Okay? So it makes me have a big question mark if there's somebody coming at has 5+ with everything turned on, because you are very seasoned in modded probably, Okay. The tips for new players. Let's get into some of the tips. If you are turning this stuff on, what do you want to advise people? Obviously, with player vulnerability, don't get hit, right? You try not to take damage. If somebody is used to has 5 and they're turning on player vulnerability, what do you recommend for them? Take, like you just said with the Omen, try not to take those greedy things, right?
You have to respect the game again. And
Yeah.
I don't think I've played vulnerability with nothing else, so that's a good thought experiment for sure. As to say, what if it just hit a lot harder?
I mean, lethal enemies wakes you up, right? When you're playing lethal as a warning and maybe you're just autopiloting, you didn't even see you're going into lethal, it only takes a hit or two to remind you, oh yeah, this is what we're doing right now, right? Shield disruption's kind of the same way. I feel like you have to be ready for that if you're going to be playing on player vulnerability. Just respect the fact that you are glass, And if you're doing this for like, I want to prove to myself that I can. First of all, we both apologize. Sorry we've been making up all these enemies that we've been ridiculing, and you've been sitting here listening to us trash on people that aren't related to you. If you're genuinely trying to do this challenge and just feel like prove it to yourself, the beers, it's okay. If you want to slice off a bit of the difficulty, I mean, Red Rock is going to counter this out, right? Just like it's okay to do something like that. Find a way to approach that challenge that feels honest to you if you're really rubbing up against, player vulnerability. And then think about like maybe this, if I'm going to be doing it, let's not play these missions where it's awful, Try to identify some missions where player vulnerability is really just not hitting for you and play something else, because it can just be a mission or a biome or a set of mutators that affects that success.
The beers definitely. Things like Dark Morkite even can have a place with 5+. So we're gonna stay on vulnerability. The amount of caves that you have to traverse and the amount of red sugar that you'll have access to before you finish the Morkite and can leave is going to be a lot more proportionally if you take something like Dark Morkite. And obviously Red Rock and taking something like Resupplier generates a lot more health out of thin air, or something like Sweet Tooth actually becomes a lot more relevant because of how much health everybody is going to be losing and how much you need to stretch the health that you have. Like, there was a point in that refinery mission that me and the people from my Discord played that pretty much everyone was on revive health and doing very well, mind you. They weren't just, like, chain dying, playing very well, and I was on full health just because I was playing neuro compact mags and just kind of, like, pushing, like, putting pressure on all the enemies that came around my team. And not doing a lot of friendly fire also because of that build was very nice, because the friendly fire is also a lot more punishing, which is another two things I've heard about the revive health and friendly fire. Another two things I've heard from usual suspects that they highlight as a bad thing, which is that friendly fire feels bad, and because player vulnerability multiplies friendly fire, it's worse and makes player vulnerability bad. And also, being on revive health on House 5, especially with vulnerability, makes you one-shot to a lot more enemies, which also makes player vulnerability bad because you are killable if you don't have much health. And, I mean, like, I guess I see where they're coming from, but I just I don't understand why having to actually respect the game and actually have health and actually take resupplies for health sometimes when you don't want to, but you will die if you don't. I don't understand how that's leveraged as a concise negative against the game. And I don't understand how saying, oh, well, now I can't be as hapless with where I'm shooting in high difficulty is also a bad thing. I mean, I get it. You're right. It doesn't feel good to die to your friend shooting you or C4ing you or a cluster grenade stripping half your health, but at the same time, it's more difficult for everybody. If your teammate kills you or strips half your health and you die a minute later because of it, that's making the game harder for them as well, and it's in their best interest not to do that.
We may actually at some point spend a whole another one of these talking about friendly fire. I would love to talk about it. I recently had, like, it stuck in my teeth, the ideas behind it and some of the gameplay stuff. I've been really thinking about it a lot. But that aspect of vulnerability, I mean, you getting punished by somebody else or you having a friendly fire problem, just think of that as an opportunity to work on it. I mean, yes, you may feel like you got killed by your friend or put into a situation where you end up dying because you got hurt. They didn't mean to do it. Okay? And like Axis said, everybody suffers from it, you know? Just because it's you who died because their mistake, maybe, in that moment, you're the one who's being punished for it. No, everybody's being punished for it. You know, they have to stop what they're doing to pick you up. And it was their mistake. They know that they messed it up. Assuming everybody's working in good faith, right? Let's just make the assumption it's not trolling, right?
I mean, I guess it's worth entertaining, but at the same time, we can't really dock points from 5+8 because someone dropped in and trolled your game by killing you faster.
I guess,
like, that's hardly even worth
for vulnerability to be on trial about this, it doesn't exclude that same person would do the same thing in a normal Has 5 game, just a little bit slower, you know? It's like a whole discussion about friendly fire at that. So if you're playing in that scenario and it's a vulnerability element, the modulator for Has 5, just this is an opportunity for you to refocus on this element. The friendly fire is making this harder, and you and your team should adapt to it. You should become better for it. When I'll tell you in earnest, I believe this. When I get hurt by another player in my games, nearly 100% of the time, it is my fault. Okay? That is what you as a player should feel if you get to a certain point. You should feel like it was your fault that you got hurt by somebody else. If you're continuing to improve, you should feel that way, because that's how I feel. It's almost always my fault that I got hurt by somebody, ideally in a game, because they're not shooting me on purpose.
Sorry. That's a great point, and I kind of forgot about it. But there was a point when we tried like 3 times at a 5+8 escort, and every time we lost because of the grab attack hitting Doretta, I believe. Or the first time I think we lost like fair and square to 2 bulks. Fair and square, you know, relative term. There was a point on that mission, I was playing Scout, and a slasher came up on me while my grapple was on cooldown, and I just kind of panicked and grappled towards Doretta, towards the tread, to try to jump up, and directly into the gunner who was shooting his minigun downwards, and I died in like half a second because I just bounced through this guard trying to grab the tread and get away. And I mean, yeah, I went the only way that I thought I could to get away, but that doesn't exclude the fact that I literally went into where bullets were going. And the fact that I got shredded in half a second, like, sure, a more careless gunner could just as easily have swept me while I was standing on flat ground shooting stuff, but in that situation, I lost that. I started the cascade that lost us that mission because I killed myself using someone else's weapons. Did that feel good? No, because it was friendly fire and I felt stupid for doing it. But that doesn't mean that that challenge isn't valid because it's a number that got ratcheted up that doesn't make me feel good. No, it's something that is more difficult because we are playing with something that modulates difficulty, and I made a mistake that cost me my life, and by extension, in my opinion, that mission, because I made a mistake that increased difficulty doesn't allow. So I don't even consider the argument of friendly fire shouldn't be boosted. I don't consider that an argument. I just see it as friendly fire is ridiculously strong in this difficulty, and now I gotta work around that. To me, it's not... I'm kind of past the point of how can I change the difficulty, and I think that's a mental state that the modded players have that I don't necessarily, which is, oh, is this fun to play against? Is this balanced? Does this feel good? Should this be stronger? Should this be weaker? It is a law of nature that I will obey, and if I can't overcome it, then it's on me. If more enemies spawned 5 bulk detonators at a time, consistently on escort, then maybe I would have some leniency on myself and say, okay, maybe this is just a little overtuned. But at the same time, that doesn't mean I'm not going to try. That doesn't mean I'm going to throw my hands up and say, all right, well, back to whatever makes me feel comfortable. I'm turning player vulnerability back off because this just isn't winnable. I'm going to fight and thrash against it until I'm either good enough to beat it or I've convinced myself that I'm not good enough to beat it. To me, it's not really like it's not a debate of saying this isn't right when it comes to difficulty. We can talk about gun balance because we can talk about like, oh, this isn't good enough, this should be better, this feels different or wrong. But when we're talking about the laws of nature in a mission, things that govern what makes it easier, what makes it harder, I don't think those are the things that you should really push and pull against, because you decide what gear you bring, you decide how you move and shoot, and targets that you pick, and everything in between, and the players that you bring with you, assuming that you're not playing pubs in 5+8, which I think is honestly suicide. But regardless of that, you have so much agency in how you interact with the difficulty of the game that basically nothing about the game and its way of fighting back against you is something that warrants you to say, well, that's just not, I mean, I can't do that. That's not fair. That's not fun. Like, yeah, some things aren't fun. Getting chain grabbed by a stingtail and having your air strafe stripped from you, not exactly fun. But the fact that you cannot get away with walking in front of NG right when he shoots MPA at a web spitter across the cave, now when that one-shots you, that's not a platform to go on and say, well, this isn't fun. You can be better than that.
As an aside, if you're listening to this and your run-in has 5+8 pubs and you're listening to us talk about this, God help you.
Honestly,
for real, God help you.
That shit must be hard.
You're
as hell.
The strongest warrior. Good luck with that. That's crazier than anything I would do.
But
okay, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Finish it.
I mean, no, I was just gonna hammer on the pub thing anymore, but no, I was just gonna dash points. Go ahead.
The going off the idea of giving advice about what this is, we're gonna move from vulnerability to the other one. I'd just say that, fair or not fair, it is what it is, the way it is right now. And if you're looking to conquer what it is right now, that's just how it is. Things hurt. And let's do more enemies and then aggressive enemies, and then we'll go to tank, and I'll do the thoughts on health stuff. So, more enemies?
I don't know all the details of more. I know it tries to improve the diversity.
Yeah, I've definitely seen
I
a
feel it
much
a
more
little.
diverse Has 5 with it for sure.
It's not the craziest. It's like maybe two more types of threats. Maybe I don't know if this information is known. Forgive me if it is, but it definitely doesn't feel like holy shit. It's run out of things to spawn. It spawned the Mactera fire bomber because the spawn table filled up. Like it's not quite that, but it's definitely a lot more wardens, trijaws, oppressors, and acid spitters at the same
Yeah.
time than I've
That's
ever
definitely
fought.
true, yeah.
And
And
that
septic spreaders in there too, and
yeah, it's
and the
just whatever.
stalkers are more prevalent. It feels like, yeah.
Yeah, the new enemies actually get a chance to make their way into the table because of it.
I'm,
It's good. It's very good.
I've noticed one oddity about it. Maybe this gets tweaked. When I played more enemies maxed out, I get like almost exclusively Trijaws instead of any regular Mactera spawn, and I'm wondering if there's something funky going on with that. It's fine, but I'll have big waves of like 12 Trijaws in vanilla, which is often confusing for me because I don't normally see that in normal DRG. So I'm not sure. I've seen a bunch of little groups of a huge amount of Trijaws just pop into existence. I'm like, uh-oh, that's gonna kill somebody for sure.
I mean, I can't say I've had the same experience, but I also
Oh,
I don't have anything to oppose you, so I'm not. Maybe I just
Yeah, I
haven't
don't know.
noticed. I might just have not noticed. 'Cause
Um,
I've genuinely, as I've been playing a +8 and the left column, so aggressive and more, I've genuinely just
Yeah, I
been
played a lot of that.
in awe so far. Like we did a sabotage with duck and cover, and the whole time Zytro was just like, "It's gonna be bad, it's gonna be bad," with the two left column mods. Just to be clear, he's like,
That's awesome.
y'all aren't ready for the acid spitters." I was like, "Oh, what are you talking about?" And I shit you not, when the duck and cover wave came, it was at least 40 acid spitters.
Oh, that's good
The
stuff.
ceiling, like I was coming up out of a little tunnel, and I saw at least like 20 just going towards the rest of my team, and I turned around and there was 4 more behind me, and they just fucking shit on me. Like that's the kind of thing that I mean, I got they'll have the modded players are like, "Oh, we've been playing increased ranged diversity for years." Bro, I don't care. I'm only interested in vanilla. Like that's just something people have to swallow. And that was one of the most fun moments. Even though we lost the
Yeah.
missions, we lost the mission seconds after that happened. That was one of the most fun moments I've had in years. Just because, like, I didn't know the game was going to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So
I really like that. I like the element of these big pools popping up. I would say I don't know if I start with the advice or the experience part of it. The more enemies is the part that really makes me feel like, and we've stepped away from the mod comparison stuff. I don't want to try to attribute where I feel like 5 plus maxed out falls within a comparison to modded, because I am above that. I know millions of people will do it. But I will say that the increased enemies brings a lot of what I love the most about modded. And many people, I'm sure, feel that same way, where it's just like, here's more guys to kill, you know?
yeah,
A lot of
they
people
don't-
will play whatever times 2, has 4 times 2, or has 4 times 3, you know? And it's just a bunch of bug stomping, you know? It brings the best of that, but I will say there's some specific difficulties I played in the past that it makes me feel, wow, this is really, really close. With the left side maxed out, like you said, more enemies, and aggressive, there are some exact profiles I played on CD that are very close to what it is. And it makes me feel like I'm actually playing that. I know I'm not. I've turned off the mod when I'm going to play this in vanilla, but it's funny how close it gets, you know, and that feels really good because it's one of those difficulties that's made to be fun like that. It was made to have that experience, and we have it in vanilla, and it's just so much fun. I know so many people in DRG are going to love that specific
I mean that's the
pairing.
thing with that's the thing with 5 plus. Even without the aggressive, like I think that is just a good natural progression that people will like to take. Is just taking more enemies 1, more enemies 2, and that's just gonna, that I think like that more than anything else in this is a valid contestant for my new base difficulty. Not
I know,
not me
and that alone,
specifically,
it's
but-
like makes it a success, right? There people can detract from elements they don't like, but at the baseline, this thing is successful. People have proven it over years of doing it with mods, and this is replicating that sort of, you know? So I know people are going to really fall in love with more enemies in vanilla, you know?
Yeah, and I'm not too hung up on the amount. I think it's like 0.75, like 1.75 times. I'm not sure if that's correct or not, but it is noticeably more enemies.
Yeah.
And it is noticeably a amount of enemies that you do have to like grapple with. Like the amount of grunts that pop out of that one little corner sometimes is enough to like make you lock in and curl your toes a little bit. And that on its own is crazy and awesome.
So this is the best one that I want to give advice for, because the obvious thing would be for me to say, well, more enemies, bring more AoE. But I don't want to say that. What I want to say is, from doing this and doing modded and learning as a player, what you've been given is a beautiful opportunity to bring your weird-ass thing if you want and see if it works, you know? Yeah, that will... The AoE and the stun and the CC is going to invalidate a bunch of the stuff that's being added to it, and that will succeed. And those things, in a meta way, may pull away from weird things. But me making a suggestion as a player is bring the thing that you like or the weird thing you want to try and match it up against there being more, you know? Because, honestly, some things come online better in an environment where there's way more enemies than they do in vanilla, and you'll find this to be true. And that's a new discovery in the builds that people don't emphasize as much. You know, people talk about meta builds, or you'll find things that work really well for you in Has 5, but there's an opportunity here for you to find things that are just really fun that don't quite come online in vanilla. You know, like Plascrete Catalyst, there might not be enough pressure from big grunt waves or something like that. But then when you add more, all of a sudden that big AoE odd minigame you're playing comes online bigger, you know? Mm-hmm. So it's a good opportunity for that, I think. That's what I would say.
Yeah, it's the most, like, tame, I think, that adds the most.
Yeah.
I mean, you got anything else?
No, that's it. Aggressive enemies. They made those shits fast, man. I would have nobody put money on GSG being like, yeah, cook those bad boys up.
Yeah,
make them sprint across the cave. I have not seen many modded difficulties that have made bugs that fast, and I cannot believe they put that in vanilla, man.
It's so fucking hype, bro. Like I said, the other fun moments I've had, other than the 40 acid spitters absolutely melting my team to the ground, is like seeing a brood nexus and being like, I'll let the driller take care of that, and running over to the refinery or something, and as soon as I stop to deposit, there's like 4 green swarmers just crawling all over me. It's like, what? Where'd you come from? Like
the inescapable chihuahuas, man.
Bro, it's so crazy. Like backpedaling away from. Like, it feels like a dream, you know? Like, I don't think I've ever had a DRG dream, but if I ever had, seeing a grunt guard ruck up on me that fast while I'm backpedaling would have been that thing, like, what it feels like to run in a dream. It's like, I'm just going to turn around and I can kill this little grunt swarm, and all of a sudden the guards are just going, poof, 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 and they're on you. Oh, man, it's hard to not talk about them all at the same time, but, like, that and more enemies, it's like, oh, a grunt wave spawned, like, 50 feet away from me. Let me get my grenade. They're upon me. Like, it's fucking crazy.
Yeah, it's really nice. It's really cool to see that pressure like that. I don't know. I think, for me, I don't like how fast they are. I don't know if I'm supposed to, and in that way, I like it. It makes me uncomfortable. They're too fast, which is good. I think they should be, but it's funny.
Very That's the thing about all of 5+8 that I really like. Like 5+2, I should say. Everything individually is very uncomfortable in its own way, and that adds value to me. Like I don't like getting one shot by a spitballer. I don't like having twice as many grunts spawn under my feet when I'm running to the drop pod, and I don't like a green swarmer fucking moving at me at Mach 2.1. But at the same time, I've stopped liking crushing bugs and winning every mission I play. So I gotta pick something, and in this situation, it's gonna be getting absolutely trashed on by the smallest enemy of the game, taking half my shield per attack. So please continue.
No, that's what's so great about it. I've played a lot of there's Starship Troopers, insane. There's 2x6. There's a few funny difficulties where speed is the name of the game and they're little fragile things. And it's always fun. You know, it's always fun to just smash them. So I think these like faster bugs is an enjoyable thing, and I think that for balancing it works. I think a subtle. I'm gonna get into this with the health a little bit more deeply, but the speed being so high helps with the problem of it being has 5 as a base for the modded argument, which I sidestepped quite a bit. It's the modded stance of, well, it has 5 base, it can never be hard. Okay, I'm not going to get into it. We've passed the community stuff. But the speed of the enemies helps with something that is a problem for has 5, which is how incredibly powerful CC and temperature is to negate difficulty. And with the enemies being that fast, they should be able to move through the player's crowd control faster to the point that they can still be disruptive, right? So something like sticky flame controlling area, you know, you can just leave the lines and leave it. And I don't know that that even changes in this, but it does give the bugs a better chance for them to sneak through because they're going faster. There's less time they're getting applied the dot. There's less time they're getting applied the heat, you know. So it makes them more successful in being a threat, where these sort of things would, if they weren't that fast, still shut them down completely, you know? So the speed works well as far as increasing that difficulty, because it's like, it just barely edges out how much crazy power the characters have to fight these bugs. You know, Fear is a good example of this. Fear is tied to effective distance that the bugs will move. That's not exactly it, but like the faster the bug is, the bug will path to the end of its fear duration quicker, right? And that will let them act faster, you know. So that's a debuff to that status effect. Something like the passive cooling of the ice trail or the slow is going to have less effect on a big portion of the enemies you fight, like Glyphid guards. They're going to be able to walk through passive ice better, you know? So it's going to have a big impact on how these characters control fights so well on a lower difficulty than when they're fast as shit. So it's a big subtle change to the game. In a similar way to us saying, like, adjust to being hurt really bad, and just being like, I gotta take less hits, and internalizing that. The same thing is for the bugs. It's like, I just can't get away with corralling them the same way that I did before and ignoring them. I have to know that they're gonna get through my defenses, my things, so.
And then also attacking faster makes it a lot less forgiving to just like hop through, because they can actually get hits on you while you're trying to pass through the sea, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is good, you know? Like, people will say what they want about this encouraging bunkering, but I mean, anything that's challenging encourages bunkering. I can't tell you how many times I've flipped on modded videos, and it's just them not walking out into an open cave and sitting in a tunnel, I mean, you call it what you want, but a bunker's a bunker. If you have a choke point to shoot at, whether it's one driller dig wide or a Morkite run tunnel wide, you're using cover and you're not fighting in the open. And I'm not saying that's wrong. Like, if we get pushed to do that in 5+8, then I mean,
yeah,
so
it's a
be
good
it.
sign. That's right. Like if you feel like you collectively, if a player is playing this way and it's like, this is encouraging me to bunker where I didn't before, great. That means that you're being pressured
challenged.
by it. Yeah.
And you're
So
falling back on the biggest crutch that you know.
yeah, perfect. Then you can walk out from there where it's not necessary. And I can tell you from experience playing things, that push you like this does, you do walk out of it. It may feel like bunkering is what I want to do right now, but you will, I mean, eventually a challenge can get so CBT that like you do, I mean, the bunkering stuff, it gets pretty real on some of that higher stuff. But yeah, I don't know. So the bunkering thing, it may seem like an argument, but it's actually kind of a defense. The bunkering is you saying, this is putting pressure on me that I feel like I have to do this. Well, that's great. It's working then, You won't have to forever. You will have freedom to move with this new speed and adjust. It is fast as shit, though. I have to give them that. It is fast. Those bugs are fast.
It's scary. I mean, if you don't have a deep bunker to fight out of, those things are just going to zoop, flip right in and be on you.
Yeah.
But, like all things, it's new, and I'm not confident I can win it immediately, and that makes it fun. I don't care if it's fair. I don't care if it's fun. I'm not confident that I can win it every time I boot it, so that's a challenge worth talking about. And even if 5+8 becomes really unfun by the time I'm done doing all the things I want to do with it, so then I just don't play anymore. I go back to Vanilla 5 and continue having fun.
Yeah. I mean, there was a lot of seasonal content that I was pretty much not having fun with anymore by the time I finished it, so it'll just join the rest. I will talk about the tanky stuff and then probably wrap on that idea, if that's cool. Is that good?
Sure. Yeah. No, I want to hear this. You've been alluding to it for a while.
Okay, the tanky stuff. We gotta bury the hatchet. Okay. So health in game design is quite the sticking point for a lot of people, right? And modded has always had this element of creating challenge. Oh, God. Where do I start with this? I don't even know how to angle this. So, Has 6 existed as an idea for such a long time. And there's variants to Has 6, and I'm not going to do a perfect history of how difficulty in modded has evolved for DRG over the years. Part of it is I didn't get to experience some of that evolution. And now that I am a part of that, and I have seen it, I can only sort of recount some stuff, but Has 6 has existed as an idea for such a long time. It's such an old prefab that was created by one guy with a vision to create a difficulty scaling up for Has 5 that was reflective of how the game already scales up from 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. So Has 6 brings many of those numbers and adjusts them in ways that are not one-to-one of how the game does it, but in a feel sense. Like, I wanted to have Has 6 feels like a skill increase that 4 to 5 does as a player, like subjective, So the numbers don't change in the same way that 4 to 5 does or 3 to 4. It's just a feels thing. And 7, I assume, with the same intent, right? So, funnily enough, like so much of modded difficulty, it revolves around this idea of somebody's vision of what that is. That's not even Ghost Ship Games. And to Ike's credit, I think he did a great job of making a great Has 6. And I would even give him the benefit of the doubt and say maybe his Has 6 would have been better than what they made. Because he respected the vision of what that was. I got to start out with this to get into the health, okay? So a part of Has 6 is that things are healthier, and difficulty scales up, things get harder to kill. Player count scales up, other enemies get another scaling for health that scales up. The tankier enemies become even harder to kill. You have more people to try to down these big things, right? Health is a variable that scales within DRG a significant amount. Now, there is a question mark that exists, which is for many of the people making difficult variants in modded or whatever have you, health is often one that does not get tweaked significantly. Ice has 6 has stayed as a monument, a pillar of what that variable should be, almost to like a, I hesitate to say this, but almost to like a religious degree for years, that should be what the breakpoints are. Because beyond that, it doesn't function the way we want. Fair enough. Fair enough. It might not be enjoyable. And I assume that you've tried it. I know that I have, for years, tried to play modes that have really healthy enemies, comically so. And my experience was a modding community member made a modded difficulty that was Has 5, but instead of increasing enemies, just increased the health pool. Because why not? He had reason to want to do this, which is the computer or his system just couldn't handle a massive amount of enemies. But it's the same idea. Rather than killing 3 of the grunt, why don't we just kill a grunt that's 3 times as healthy? And I played that, and it seems to me I like this more than other people do. I think a lot of people find that increased health on enemies is frustrating. They don't want to kill a swarmer that takes 2 pickaxe hits. I've heard that a lot from when I've gotten back and seen DRG in experimental, post-experimental. These breakpoints that they're assigning of increased health from vanilla is it's too healthy or something like that. Well, it's par for the course. Over the last 4 years, a lot of people don't want health as a needle to move because of many different reasons, you know. But I put that on trial because I think that health is valid for them to move up, and here's why. I think that the breakpoints that have been assigned to be okay are arbitrary. As much as respect I put onto what those things are within modded as a principle, as a primary idea, as trials that people have done, I don't think that they're robust enough to say this is the value health should be forever for this enemy and nobody should touch it. It's the way it is. I think doing something like that is uninformed. I think it's plateauing of your ability. I think you should play with the numbers and try it for yourself, or to move the idea of the game forward. You've got to try to do things that are uncomfortable and do them because they're uncomfortable, like that with the health. And then beyond that, health lets them solve something they didn't do, which is they didn't make the wave timers shorter in between. They didn't make the enemy diversity more than what they did. They didn't do these other things. Health solves that. By having it be healthier, combat is extended. So the range between windows of fights is shortened because you have to physically spend longer with that enemy or that group of enemies to conquer it. Health is the solution to the wave timer not being short as an option within the settings. So beyond that, health also moves the needle for the meta. Just like I said, AoE cleave can be moved forward by more enemies or higher density. Well, health changes the value of single target. It changes the value of time to kill significantly. It changes all sorts of stuff. And moving that changes a different part of difficulty. That's actually, in my opinion, why a lot of people push back against health in certain modded environments, is because they don't want that thing to change. They don't want that breakpoint to change because they're comfortable with it. When it moves, it becomes less fun to them. And that's totally valid, but that doesn't make it not a good thing to have adjust the difficulty. And I think health here is an extremely elegant way to make DRG harder when the system can't handle some of the other things, right? If you want Xbox or console players both to enjoy a more difficult challenge and you can't really push the game to do these things, you know, newer computers can adapt to these new things, health really solves the problem. I know this from having tried it years ago for that very specific reason, you know. Does it become harder necessarily? Well, it's not harder to kill a healthier Praetorian, right? It's just a bullet sponge, you know. Well, no, but it's asking you to do something different, and it's going to punish the same things. You have to pay attention to this enemy. You have to fire the shots. You have to respect that it's here, and you got to take the time to do it. Does it make it harder? Not directly. It's still the same task, but it makes the whole environment different. If you don't like that it takes all this time, that's a fair criticism, but it is changing the experience, you know? And it is a difficulty ramp to have to deal with that, you know? Making a bulk one-shot changes the difficulty of the bulk. You know, it's just like... Things don't just become bullet sponges and it's bad design. It's an important element to difficulty to have that lever. And I think that having it here is really successful. So that's all of my counterpoint to people talking about health as a factor in this, if health is on trial. So that's my big health thing. So there you go. I can give advice about tackling health if you want, but if there's stuff you want to add to it, you can go ahead.
I don't know. I think health is just seeing the reluctance of people that like smashing ×2 enemy quantity to seeing health step into that environment immediately makes me interested, just because I want to be contrarian in that way. But at the same time, I completely take your point, and I didn't think about it in a lot of the ways you had to say. But yeah, it legitimately does make things that are not a threat, or that aren't like that one grunt that wouldn't have got to you otherwise. Like, yeah, like you said, it's not necessarily making it more difficult, but now you have to shoot that first grunt a second time.
Yeah, and like with faster enemies, it changes the dynamic of control, like with Sticky Flame, for example, right? If these enemies that Sticky Flame is invalidating are twice as healthy, how does that change it? Well, somebody can say, it doesn't matter, Sticky Flame King, you just shoot more lines, W, you know? Sure, but that's the task you have to do now, because that thing is more healthy. You got to do it. What does that mean? That's more lines, that's more time, that's more ammo, that's more focus. That's the thing that it's asking you to do. This is real challenge. Up from, if you doubled the enemy and you just zone controlled this with AoE, with Flame, or whatever else, what did those new enemies do? You know, it felt good crushing them, but they weren't doing anything. They had less chance to hurt you than if they were resilient, you know? So,
and I would say that doubling the amount of enemies against something like Sticky Flames is actually a buff, because fire spread only benefits from it.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
it's kind of pretty niche example. But another thing that I'd want to say about the Sticky Flame example is, by taking Sticky Flames, and even if you can just sweep them with another line, the gap between you and killing healthier enemies has gotten significantly larger. Let's say we double the health of the grunts, and that requires you to shoot one more line. Well, you've also doubled the health of everything else in the game. You've doubled the health of Wardens, Oppressors, Trijaws, Mactera, and by continuing to take Sticky Flames and continuing to invalidate that one class of enemy, which is the ground-based, quote-unquote, low-health bugs, are now even more reliant on the rest of your team, or whatever else you can do with your weapons, or God forbid, chipping them to death with Sticky Flames to deal with healthier, higher threat enemies. So it may actually force you to take a real primary and actually learn how to play the game.
I feel like there are many things that we've talked about where we could be picked apart by many little cuts, right? But I wanna say that I don't defend wholeheartedly everything about these systems. I defend very much the ideas. And something like you say, all of these enemies are now doubled in health. I realize you can make a really easy example. You have a person dies, they're playing on ×2 health, and an oppressor walks onto their body, and now the likelihood of them getting picked up by a teammate is way lower than before, because they have to chunk through this huge task, and there's all this other pressure, and it's just not a fun experience, because now they're dead, and it doesn't even matter how they died, that's just the situation they're in, and they're less likely to be able to play again because that oppressor is so tanky, and it is a bullet sponge. I respect that. I'm sure that's not what the devs want the player experience to be, and there's definitely something that could be fine-tuned about that. So I'm not obstinate. I realize, like, there's a limit, right? But just the whole idea. I don't think people usually are giving the benefit to the doubt. It's usually just bullet sponge, no thank you, you know.
Yeah, and I don't know. There's something about the spongy enemies that also makes me think is like, yeah, it does feel really bad to take a third mag to kill something that you used to kill in two, or not be able to effectively solo an enemy or one-shot them that you used to be able to. But I just want a lot of people, especially veteran players, to take a step back and think about the engagements you have when you're playing your good builds over the course of a mission. How many enemies that you encounter in your average mission do you actually rely on team play to fight?
Yeah.
Basically,
Yeah,
nothing.
it's like none, right?
I mean, maybe like there's enemies that you end up shooting together, but the
Yeah.
fact that you can quickly jump around an oppressor and kill it before it can turn around on 4 out of 4 classes in the game, pretty much regardless of what build you're using, is something to be explored.
Hmm.
And actually taking a gunner primary that doesn't do flame and relying on your sticky flame driller to proc VB might be something that we need to explore. Or combustive goo mix and not taking heat on EPC so that you can take EPC or thin containment field and persistent plasma, and then use your gunner with hot bullets or bullet hell or hellfire coil gun to proc combustive goo, and actually playing something with your teammates instead of 4 people crushing a bunch of bugs in the same cave together. And like, yeah, it's probably still going to be the same builds. It's still probably going to be fire gunner with VB, but now actually linking up with your teammate to kill that oppressor that has twice the amount of health, that is actually stripping time away from your scout trying to kill it, so the oppressor doesn't just go rumble over your driller who's trying to do something. For your gunner actually helping your scout kill something instead of just the scout putting 2 mags of embedded dets into it, or 1.1 mags, I guess, and just insta-killing it, and actually having help. I mean, it's an interesting idea to explore at least. I know it doesn't feel good to not be able to kill stuff as efficiently, but just like everything else with 5.8, or 5+8, everything that you add to it adds some new layer of complexity that people don't want to entertain because it doesn't feel fun for them. Yeah, it doesn't
Yeah.
feel fun to die in a focus shot that accidentally hit you. But, I mean, that's something you have to get better at. Yeah, it doesn't feel fun for the enemies to take more damage, but that's why there's 4 of you there to fight together. It doesn't feel fun. Well, it does feel fun for there to be more enemies, but when they're also more tanky and you're dying in one hit, then you really got to lock in and get your shit together. And when on top of all of that, the enemies are moving at you at damn near twice the speed and tearing chunks out of you when they get close, you actually have to rely on your gunner to throw a shield before someone goes down, so that you can actually fight off the density of the swarm and kill the HVTs before somebody dies instead of after. Because by the time they die, then they're susceptible to basically every enemy one-shotting them when they get back up.
Yeah.
And it's gonna... Go ahead.
If I had to use this to swing an attack finally levied against the vanilla purists, I mean, this thing you're describing is exactly what a huge portion of modded players that are just there to enjoy it are seeking. You know, a reason to require that team play element more than vanilla, you know? And so if there's vanilla purists looking at this and seeing, you know, that element to it, that's what these people have been trying to do with modded for a long time. That aren't the people who are looking for like an ego challenge thing, you know, that are looking for more DRG team focused stuff. And now should be, hopefully, a vanilla, I don't want to say alternative, but a vanilla option to try to have that same experience that I think a lot of people who play 6x2 today play that difficulty for, you know? I'm not trying to compare the two, but I'm just saying there are elements that are I think to approach both require the same thing you're talking about, which it's like I need to be ready to work on this with a teammate, and I need to go into that with the idea that we're gonna cooperatively kill this enemy, or if things start to spiral, they're gonna spiral quick. So I need to be ready to shield, or I need to be, they have the same elements, I guess.
Yeah, and I don't. I feel like that's always gotten lost in translation. That I don't inherently dislike anything about modded. It's like I get that people. That's what people want from it. They want a challenge. They want to actually have to cooperate in a co-op game. God forbid. That's just not what I want from the game. I want to smash objectives and see how fast I can push the gameplay loop. So for that reason, I've just always never like. For me, there's no value, and like I see their value in 6x2, which is an increased challenge. But for me, there's no problem to be solved there. It's more enemies in my way of how quickly can I bank 7 quarks before the swarm hits. And like, yeah, it would be a bigger challenge to get that done before the reduced swarm timer spawns on a modded difficulty, but at the same time, it feels completely arbitrary because why should I accept this swarm timer versus another modded difficulty swarm timer, whereas the vanilla game is kind of set in stone. So, I mean, I've done this cope argument a million times, but I've dipped my toes into it before, and I don't really love it because usually the people that I enjoy playing with, we crush it pretty much as easily as has 5 with just a few more downs because you got run over by 2 oppressors or something, but it's definitely a greater challenge, and I think people looking for that definitely have always had no option but to go to modded, because I think what I do is very niche and not satisfying for people that are looking to fight harder or have to play with a team. Like, yeah, ripping 7 quarks in under 2 minutes is a team activity, but it doesn't feel like a team activity to most people. And probably
there is that road that splits, and I think I definitely have walked mostly that road that you're talking about, where wanting to go down speed play, that's where I gravitate to more. I enjoy that a lot, just like doing the task quick, or just worrying about that more. Not that I do it with such diligence, it's just that's the way I gravitate towards as well, rather than this doesn't feel fun because we're just not even fighting. I'm much the opposite way. It's like, damn, we played so good, we didn't even fight anything. It's just always the way I've been about it.
Yeah, and to that end, I don't know how much of this I'll actually incorporate into how I like to play the game. But I mean, the XP incentive is definitely there, and it interests me as to how that interweaves, because in a lot of senses, it doesn't seem like it's worth it until you are a lot better than it, is the thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I gotta play it to be better than it, so committing the time and cutting the teeth on it is gonna be a fun to that end, is like, can I get this down to a hazard 5 level of speed, and like, can I cope with like 5+4 in the same way that I can hazard 5. And I think at a point that will definitely be possible, but it'll take time to see, and that's why I'm so fucking irrationally angry at everyone who's like, this isn't fun.
This has gotta be changed, gotta be nerfed. Yeah. I have
brother, you haven't even played it yet.
I have a final warning about that as well after that, which is that worry that let's acclimate to it because maybe it'll be our Has 5. For me, we have to recognize as a community as a whole, we made a mistake with elites because we really made them crush elites as far as what they are. They got sequestered to a part of the game that's just what they are, and there was a cool vision there that, like, yeah, maybe I'm coping because I really actually wouldn't want to get hit by an elite grabber like at least once a day. But like, I feel like the hammer came down with elites because sure, they were off the mark and there was a lot of things I didn't like about them, but what ended up being the result of it is not they made it into something I liked. They just put that in a corner and forgot about it. And it was a big deal to them, I think. And it got essentially minimized by the community response. I don't want the hazard modifiers to be treated the same way of, oh, we were way off the mark, because the community response is really negative about A, B, C, and D. So why don't we just make them really trivial, and then people can just put them all on because they're way too hard. That's what they're saying, and that's not the experience they want. They want Has 5 Plus to just be Has 5, and do it, and we'll do that. I don't want to turn around and next week it all be gone because people weren't acclimated to it yet, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm worried about.
God damn it, I want time to suffer with this.
I had to learn my lesson. I was wrong about elites, okay? I don't think that it would be perfect if the way they were in experimental when they came out was the way it is now. I'm not saying that, but I was wrong to go to task against them as much as I did. Because now I realize what the vision was and what they could have been, and the cost was now they don't matter at all. They're a random mutator that you can just ignore, essentially. And they're really dulled down in that mutator, so...
Yeah, I think, I don't know if I was as verbal about it. I think I was in the 34 video. I think that's where they were, right? But I don't know. I had a few bad experiences, namely unkillable elite oppressor because I was playing cryo driller. It was, I mean, what couldn't freeze it, couldn't do anything. It was just basically invincible. It took me like 15 minutes to kill. So that alone sold me on the idea of them being bad. And I mean, to that end, I don't think that was right, but I definitely didn't foresee them going the way that they did. I definitely wanted to see like the Risk of Rain elites, like
yeah, that's the problem.
A blue Trijaw flies at you and spits 5 little projectiles instead of 3 that hurt less.
That's exactly what I'd convince myself of, you know. Same thing, Risk of Rain poisoned my mind. And it's all going back to the same thing, right? Which is the expectation for what the content should be. I'm just begging anybody hearing this to just, you know, change your mind. Let it stay hard if you feel like it's hard, you know? And if you feel like it's too easy, then why are you watching this, man?
Yeah, like,
just go back to...
Have you tried being one-shotted by a spitballer and saying, oh, like, holy shit, this is actually hard?
Close the tab. Go back to playing whatever weird modded thing that was so hard. You have more fun on that. You know?
Yeah, but this is also easier. Don't forget about that.
Yeah, that's what I mean. If it's, you know, it's easier than just let us suck, you know? Let us have our... Don't make it harder for us. It's hard enough for a bunch of other people.
Yeah. Let us have our too hard but also too easy difficulty that's really unfun for you.
Yeah, we'll see in time. I guess I will close with my personal experience with it so far. I played it a few times in multiplayer, and it's been really sort of all over the place. Like, sometimes, wow, it felt like I got my butt kicked. And then other times, the teamwork was on and didn't feel too bad. I didn't feel like, oh, this is all of the modifiers on right now, you know? Mm-hmm. So it's a little swingy in that way. I guess I am sort of used to there being that much enemy density, you know, and I have experience with really healthy enemies as well. So it didn't feel out of the norm for me. But in solo, there was a lot of... I had to think very critically about what I was doing to have any success, and there was a lot of pushback. I had a lot of pressure, definitely some bad deaths, definitely a lot of assumption about things I could get away with, you know, and didn't respect a bunch of stuff. So it definitely pushed me back in solo quite a bit. And it's winnable. But I have to... There's no amount of me playing it passive, you know, for myself in solo. I'm going to have to treat it like really... like I'm playing something hard, you know?
Yeah. And
so...
I don't know. I think just diving into it head first all the way to the right true solo is what's got a lot of people fucked up. I don't know if this is necessarily something that you can consistently do without dying. Like, there will be situations, like, there's always going to be a way out of it, but whether or not you can identify that, react to it, and execute it in however much time it takes for the 15 Trijaws to wind up and just absolutely melt you is hard to say. But, like, I think that the conception from a lot of modded difficulties that, yeah, you can go in as scout with no Bosco and just run around until you figure it out is wrong. And there will be unwinnable situations that you make for yourself without even realizing it. Just because you go forward instead of backwards out of the pod, you might have sealed your fate because you're not going to react fast enough to what happens next. And, I mean, maybe I'm wrong about that, and every situation is winnable and it's a skill issue. But at the same time, like, the fact that I even think that there are situations in this that are actually that difficult is worth putting in cryostasis and letting us figure it out and play with it before it gets relegated to gotta nerf it or I'm gonna head out back to 200 more kite fucking any mod.
I mean, there's just such a huge percentage of players where it's gonna be difficult enough, you know, that it's not even like it's not worth buffing it or making it harder or anything, you know, because there's just gonna be so many people who never, honestly, maybe I'm crazy for saying this, there's going to be a lot of players who will never finish a mission maxed out on Has 5 solo, you know? I think it's just a big task. I know what it takes to win, and I know how much time I put into the game, and like I said much earlier on, I have a lot of room for improvement, and I'm definitely not the best, but it's a casual game about co-op mining. That mode in vanilla is going to be hard enough that it's going to stop many people from ever winning that, for sure. I can say that comfortably, that it may not be the difficulty that you think is the end-all be-all, or the great equalizer, or the test, or the cutoff for being good, or whatever. I'm just saying that there's a vast majority of players who I don't think will be able to take that on solo, who would even want to do everything like that, you know? It's definitely cut off for that.
And here's another thing about this that I think is a very personal thing that stems a lot from me just not really clicking with, like, player-made content, is this isn't the kind of thing where it's like, man, I'm not having fun. I'm gonna open the zip. I'm gonna open Mod Hub, and I'm going to cut back the health of the swarmers. This isn't the kind of thing where it's like, man, I wish this was, like, more reasonable, and I can do something about it. This is actually something you just have to break yourself on to win. Mm-hmm. And I know plenty of the modded players are already tearing through it and winning this mission on whatever 3rd, 4th, 5th attempt with a really bad build, and just complaining about it, saying it's unfun. But at the same time, like, it's not the kind of thing where it's like, oh, well, if I want this to be more fun, I'm just going to make it easier. You don't make it easier. Well, I mean, you turn off the modifiers, but 5+8 specifically, you don't just make it easier because you want it to be easier. You don't go down to a lower modded difficulty. If you want to win 5+8, you got to win 5+8 with the tools that are available to you, whether that's buff beer, changing your build, actually taking Bosco and learning how to utilize him. Get called out, true solo. But point being, even if you don't want to die, take Bosco, learn to use him, and learn to use him to make the missions flow better for you. Because, not talking to the people that are complaining about it and beating it, just to be clear anymore, but for anybody that's trying to, like, pivot from vanilla challenge stuff like true solo or Carl Dive or the lower end modded stuff, like, true solo is not the way to approach this. From what I can tell, because
you definitely learn way faster if you had Bosco and give yourself attempts, for sure.
And not only that, but, like, I don't know. I don't think necessarily, like, just pulling out the laser and left clicking is a challenge that people don't know how to do, but actually getting Bosco to work, like, and using him, like, there's a reason he's there in solo. I get that people can beat really hard difficulties, be it 5+8 or modded difficulties, without Bosco and just raw dogging it by themselves without going down, or with just using one iron will because they got stuck in a bad situation. But, like, comparison Thief of Joy. So say it again for the people in the back. Like, I don't care. I'm not going to turn off Bosco for 5+8. Just genuinely because he makes the missions flow better and he's another system to manipulate. It's not necessarily hard, but mining Nitra is not interesting. It's not a challenge. So I'm going to have Bosco do that for me.
Yeah, I think that he adds a fun dynamic to play in solo play. Even as, like, a viewer, I understand what true solo is and why you don't bring Bosco, but I also think like I agree with Axis that if it with skill, Bosco can add a layer to that skill. If you're so good that you wouldn't die, Bosco shouldn't move the needle that said I only had this be so easy because I had Bosco. I think Bosco can be used as a component to make you succeed in an even more creative way. I think that turning him off sort of defeats the purpose in my mind of what an exhibition of play is, right? And he's not adding to the challenge so much. I don't know. True solo, if you die, you can upload it that you died, or you can delete the VOD. You can do that with Bosco on the map. It's fine. He adds a cool dynamics to the mission. So I agree with Axis on that for sure. Bring the bot.
Like, I get it. Like, he'll kill a few swarmers for you, so it's easy to say that he trivializes combat. But at the same time, keeping Bosco occupied, not just with combat, getting Nitro, like, think about on an escort. Like, as you're moving through the caves, trying to keep him engaged, keep him mining stuff, getting the hardest to reach oil shale specifically, keeping an eye on him. Once he gets the bulk of it, pull him off, because he's going to be mining the .1s for half an hour, because he's very slow at digging the oil shale, getting him in the density of the next one, finding something valuable. I don't know. It's a skill. It's not hard. I understand that on a tactile level. Oh, hello, cat. Hey, bug. I have a cat on my desk, sorry. On a tactile level, holding the laser and pressing left click on Nitro isn't exactly challenging. I might convince you it is by how many times I miss the vein. That's beside the point. But actually keeping him engaged, and when you have an audience of people watching your screen, and as soon as that little pickaxe icon goes away on his portrait, you immediately put him on something else, that says more to me about someone's skill than any amount of Morkite mining missions you can do while chaining fire spreads in an IFG. Because that shows mastery of something other than just movement and shootment. That shows that you are actually paying attention and controlling multiple factors in the mission to get it done better. You've proven that you've proven that you can win it, clearly, and that's probably a good thing to... Hey. That's probably a good thing to prove, is that you can do it without Bosco. I'm sure that's valuable for some people, but at the same time, like, if I see someone so convincingly crushing a mission with Bosco and just not giving him any downtime and taking no deaths, I'm convinced that they can win it without him, just at a much slower and more frustrating pace.
Yeah. We got into the true solo thing. I mean, I think part of our view on it is that same divide, which is the, like, speed play. You and I are kind of utilitarian in the, like, why leave this tool behind that makes it a better performance, and, the value of it is just different for us versus other people, Yeah. People want to highlight that they did everything themselves, and I respect that, but for me, it's just like, I like when people have really good macro, that decision making is elevated, but that comes from, like, enjoying speedrunning and watching speedrunners and stuff, so it's a little different. Anyways, I gotta wrap up. I gotta go.
He's gotta go eat.
I do. I haven't ate all day.
I've got a little bug on my desk eating my envelopes. What are you doing? Stop.
Anyways, long story short, Season 5 good.
Season 5 very good. Community bad. Worse than ever, maybe.
I just don't know. If you hate this and you hate us and you disagree with us, I feel you, man. Look, I'm sorry. The game doesn't the way you wanted it to be.
I know. I hate Milli, too. He doesn't like player vulnerability.
He's just obsessed with health. He wants everything to be so tanky. It's ridiculous. Yeah, I get it, man. I get it.
He literally sent me a health kit in the mail. Can you believe this? It was a pipe bomb.
Okay, well, we're going to have to record our gameplay for this in a little bit. I might be able to make some time in a couple hours if you're still around. So
probably.
But see you later, YouTube comments. YouTube
that-
commenter, if
they'll
you're still
find you.
listening, YouTuber, if you're still listening, shout outs to Gago. I want to see some shout outs to Gago in the comments. MVP, Gago, let's go. Number 1 Gago fan.
Let's Gago. No, it's
Yeah,
me.
let's
Number
Gago.
1 fan. You're number 2 Gago fan.
Okay, well, thanks for talking, man. Thanks for hanging. This is a good sesh.
For sure. Hopefully I can edit out all those names I called the modded players.
No, that's fine. I think it was pretty solid. I don't think there was any. I don't think there should be any hurt feelings.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah? You don't think there's going to be another post-cry monologue for this one? Alright. Appreciate it.
Okay, well, I'm going to go get some food and hang out with H2 for a bit, but I'll hit you up in the middle of the night for games if you want to play.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, peace, man.
Bye-bye. What'll it be, Greenbeard? Hazard 5 plus 8? I'll have a 9x2 added diversity Diablo sauce 200 more kite. 4x4 animal style extra dreadnoughts, grapple in a drill, light resupplies, make it cryo, burn it with sticky flames, and let it bunker. We serve gameplay here, sir.